Is obesity a choice? Some people think it is, and a lot of people who do carry extra unwanted pounds feel that they are judged as if they chose to be that way, that they only have themselves to blame. And people will give you their advice on how to lose weight, saying things like eat less and healthier and move more. Those were the exact words of someone commenting on one of my reels on Instagram the other day. They wrote a bit more, though the point that they were trying to make was that it's really that simple. So I'm assuming that this person also then thinks that people who are overweight have chosen to be that way. Because haven't we all been told to eat less and move more and eat more veggies for decades now? All while obesity has skyrocketed? Do you really think that there are many people in this world with access to the internet who haven't heard that in order to lose weight you need to eat less, move more and eat more veggies? I doubt that you can find many. Let me know if you do. The point is, practically everyone knows the mainstream advice on how to lose weight. And still, obesity is becoming more or less like the norm. So either people don't mind being overweight or obese, so they don't really care to do anything about it, which I highly doubt is the case for most people, even with the body positivity movement. And just seeing how much money is spent on weight loss each year says a lot about how important people think this is. So either people don't actually try to lose weight, or the advice we're given isn't working for most people. Now, I'm not saying that you can't lose weight by eating less and moving more. The TV show The Biggest Loser is a great example of how it is possible. People lost impressive amounts of weight on that show. Though what a lot of people don't know is that when the first participants were followed up 6 years after the show, they had regained on average 70% of the weight they had lost. And that's something we see time and time again. A lot of the few people that manage to lose the weight end up gaining a lot of it back again. Sometimes even more than what they lost in the first place. Why? I mean, they obviously knew how to lose the weight, so how come they couldn't keep it off? Well, maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe eating the amount they were eating left them too hungry. Maybe exercising that much left them exhausted. And maybe they just didn't enjoy the food, which left them with lots and lots of cravings. Doesn't this make you wonder though? I mean, there are still plenty of people in this world, though fewer and fewer by the day, who have never been overweight or obese and that manage to stay at a normal weight. How come they are able to do that while others just can't seem to do it? Do they simply have more willpower to follow through? Or could it be easier for them somehow? By the way, I just want to say welcome back to my channel. In case you don't know me, I'm Ingunn, a Norwegian Viking living in Portugal. I love nutrition and the human body, though back in the day I actually did my master's in physics and mathematics and worked with that for a while. Though I've taken that analytical and critical thinking and I now apply it to nutrition science and weight loss science, because that's what I've found that I'm truly passionate about, and because most of what we're told about nutrition and weight loss is wrong, or at least highly flawed. So I'm sharing what I know and what I learn along the way with you here, so make sure you subscribe for a bit of a different, no BS take on nutrition and weight loss. So let's get back to whether or not obesity is a choice. And like we just talked about, how come some people are able to stay at a normal weight their whole life while others just can't seem to do it? Do they simply have more willpower to follow through? Or could it be easier for them somehow? An interesting study done in mice had several generations of mice eating the same Western style diet, and they found that the later generations gained more fat while eating similar amounts of food. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? I mean, if this is any indication of what's happening with us humans, no wonder it's so difficult to stay at a normal weight if you can gain more fat than your parents or grandparents while eating about the same amount of food. How is that even possible? I mean, it must mean that the later generations had a slower metabolism, right? And that might actually be happening with us humans as well, that our metabolism is slowing down. Though note that when a later generation of mice were put on a standard diet, they went back to normal weight, even while eating about the same amount of food. Again, if that's any indication of what's happening with us humans, it means that we would be able to get back to a normal weight simply by improving what we eat. Not by counting calories and trying to burn more calories by exercising, but by simply improving the types of food we eat. And as we know, for us humans, even while eating the same amount of calories and doing the same amount of physical activity, we may burn more than 300 calories calories more per day depending on the specific foods we eat. Or another way to look at it, we may end up burning 300 calories less per day depending on the specific foods we choose to eat. Though not a lot of people know this because the focus is always on the number of calories we consume and the number of calories we burn with exercise, and not how the specific foods we eat affect how many calories we burn and also the health of our metabolism. And if we don't know how the food we eat affects our body, how can we make the right choice on what to eat so that we don't gain excess fat too easily? Actually, altogether, the food we eat may even affect how much of the food we eat gets stored as fat. As I explained in my previous video, which you should definitely check out if you haven't already, I'll link to it below. In order for your body to burn energy, it first needs to convert fat and carbs into energy the body can actually spend or burn off. This is your body's energy production. Though before it can produce energy to burn off, it first needs to decide whether to actually produce energy from the fat or carbs or instead send it to be stored as fat. And this decision is dependent on a specific type of enzyme within your mitochondria called aconitase. And there are several things that can influence or inhibit this enzyme from doing its job properly, which can then lead to the body storing more fat instead of burning it off. Ouch. In this study on mice that we looked at earlier, the main feature of the Western style diet that caused the mice to store too much fat was that it was especially high in a specific type of fat called linoleic acid. And it wasn't just a random decision to make this diet high in linoleic acid. I mean, this study, even though it was done in mice, was done in order to try to better understand what is actually happening with us humans. So the researchers specifically chose to make it high in linoleic acid because it reflects the reality of the modern human diet today. Just like obesity has skyrocketed in the last half century, so has the consumption of vegetable oils, in particular those made from seeds and that are extremely high in linoleic acid, which, by the way, accumulates in your body, and it's found in higher percentage in obese people than in leaner people. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, leave a comment, let me know your take on this. Do you think obesity is a choice? And also follow me on Instagram for lots more tips at Viking Ingun. Now, excess linoleic acid is just one of the problems with the foods that we eat today, though a big one. And even if you try to avoid the most obvious offenders, you'll still likely consume a lot of vegetable oil high in linoleic acid because they are everywhere. Also in so-called healthy alternatives. And that brings up a whole other issue, because let's say someone wants to improve their diet. They want to choose to be of normal weight, so they decide they want to eat healthy. So what should they eat? I mean, we all know the typical foods we shouldn't be eating if we want to lose weight, right? Though what should we replace those foods with if we want to lose weight? This is a very big issue. People think it's just a matter of deciding whether or not to eat junk food. Though what you eat in place of that food is critical. Should you eat mostly low-calorie veggies and salads that fill up your stomach yet leaves you hungry soon after and with lots of cravings? What about those healthy alternatives that often turn out to be anything but healthy? Actually, is that even what those people who are of normal weight their whole lives eat? You don't need to go that far back in time to know that that's not the case. Traditional food people have been eating for a very long time without having an obesity epidemic, is usually centered around meat and seafood, not salad. Of course, there might be veggies as well, though the most valued foods are foods that provide energy and nutrients, including the most digestible and energy-dense plant foods. And what we're saying today is the opposite. Basically, to focus on the least digestible, low energy dense foods, especially if you want to lose weight. Basically, foods that fill up your stomach without adding much calories. That's pretty much what it's about. And a lot of people don't enjoy that food, they don't feel satiated, they get all sorts of cravings, and it becomes impossible to stick it out. Again, people think it's so easy to just tell people to stop eating junk food. Though unless you know what to replace it with, it's really not that easy. And on top of that, you're supposed to eat less, right? People think it's such a simple thing to just eat less. Just eat less. Though the advice to eat less assumes that the problem is the amount of food that we're eating. Though what if we're actually burning fewer calories due to having an impaired fat burning and storing too much fat? Eating less isn't going to fix that problem, even if you end up losing weight. Or what if you're simply burning fewer calories due to the types of food that you're eating? Two different diets containing the same number of calories can have a very different effect on your weight, as I explain in this video, which I'll link to below. Again, eating less doesn't change that. And when losing weight this way, the body has mechanisms in place both for trying to prevent you from actually losing the weight, and if you manage to lose the weight, trying to get you to regain the weight that you lost. It's even found that hormones designed to make you regain the weight are still elevated a year after you lost the weight, including hunger hormones. So can you blame people for gaining the weight back when they follow mainstream advice to lose the weight? And we haven't even talked about how burning extra calories with exercise after a certain point might not even work. Even if you put in a ton of effort to burn calories doing cardio, in the end, you might not actually burn more calories in total. Check out my video on the shocking science of burning calories with cardio. I'll link to it below. Listen, if obesity is a choice, if you're saying that if a person is obese, then that person has chosen to be obese, then in my opinion, that must mean that, for one, that person knows what caused him or her to become obese, and maybe even more importantly, that person knows how to not be obese in a way that does not involve starving oneself. And we'll get back to that. Though first, remember that I mentioned there's an enzyme within your mitochondria that, if it's inhibited from doing its job properly, it can result in your body storing more fat and having less energy to burn off. Well, there are different things that can cause this to happen. For example, if the body has a certain type of inflammatory response over a long period of time, which can happen even if you don't notice it. And that can be caused by a lot of different things. One study even found that it happened to people taking antidepressant medication. It can also be related to your gut and the foods that you eat. There are also certain medical conditions that can make it easier to gain weight and more difficult to lose weight. For example, if you have issues with your thyroid. So do you see how we can't just assume that everyone who's overweight or obese have chosen to be that way? Or at least we cannot assume that it's just as easy for them as it is for someone else to be skinny. The whole "if I can do it, you can do it" doesn't always apply. On the other hand, of course, you do choose whether or not to eat that cookie, though you don't become obese from eating one cookie. Obesity is not a choice in the sense that you click one button, the obese button. I choose to be obese. I'm pretty sure no one would actually do that. Though you could say that obesity is a result of a lot of smaller decisions combined. I mean, you can choose to eat junk food and cookies and cake and chips, etc. And combined, those choices can lead to obesity over time. Though that doesn't mean that every time you eat junk food, you're choosing obesity. There are some skinny people that eat crappy food and show it off on social media. Though always remember, you do not know what they go through in order to do that. They might be otherwise starving themselves. Or maybe they are the first generation to eat that way and don't gain weight as easily, like we saw with the mice. Also, always remember that just because someone is skinny, that most certainly does not mean they are healthy. So you always have the choice of what to eat, based on your current situation, of course, based on the foods that are available to you. Though note that it is possible to eat healthy on a budget, even though most of the cheap food is crap and made to be as addicting as possible so that you keep coming back for more. Remember that it's not only about the foods that you choose not to eat, it's also about the foods that you choose to eat instead, which has a huge impact on how easy it is for us to avoid the foods that we know we shouldn't be eating, and how easy it is to lose the weight and keep it off. People who are of normal weight their whole life do not starve themselves, or at least that's not a requirement for being of normal weight. So in my opinion, you cannot consider starving oneself as a liable option for an overweight person to become of normal weight. And if that's not a liable option, then does the overweight person even have a choice? I mean, if eating very little is off the table, the answer is yes. though they might just not know about it. Remember, even the mice in the later generation became of normal weight once they switched to a different diet, even though they were predisposed to gaining more fat than their grandparents. And also remember that the foods that you eat can affect how much of what you eat gets stored as fat, as well as how many calories you burn. And it affects your hunger and cravings as well. So the food you eat can either make it easier or more difficult for you to lose weight. And what foods you eat is something that you are in control of. It's easy to focus on all the things that are out of your control and that might make it more difficult for you. Though when you focus on what is within your control, that's when you can truly make an impact. That's when you can truly change your life for the better. Weight loss is so focused on limiting ourselves, eating very little, eating food we don't like, while at the same time pushing our body to do more. It's basically all about working against our body. And it's not working. So instead, focus on what your body needs. Focus on giving your body everything it needs to function optimally. Work with your body, help it thrive. Losing excess fat is just a side effect of helping your body thrive. It's not about eating very little, it's about eating the right foods. And if you want to know more about how to do that, make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I'll also link to videos to check out below this video. And if you want to know step by step how to lose weight this way, then make sure you check out my 90-day weight loss program called Slim by Science. I'll link to it below in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, leave a comment, let me know your take on this, whether or not you think obesity is a choice, if you have any other comments, and I'll see you in the next video. And by the way, these are 2 videos you'll want to check out next.